No matter how long I've been playing games, there's still a presumptive teenage brat caged in my brain. The same twerp that wrote off Dragon Age Origins, 'cause I don't like fantasy. The same fool who started with Splinter Cell Conviction, 'cause I don't like stealth games. And the full-on moron that skipped Microsoft's best genre efforts, 'cause I don't like Xbox wheels. Each tale of my ignorance has the same ending. A vapid, presumptive, grown-ass man falling in love with a package of pixels, sometimes a whole decade later. Learning the valuable lesson that being wrong isn't always painful. Sometimes it can be amazing. And the latest entry in this lifelong saga happened to Max Payne's Pro Skater. For years I'd been told to play this game, and just from this elevator pitch, I was intrigued to try this game. Only upon starting this game, I was met with lock-on combat, unlike Max Payne, and no bailing, unlike Pro Skater. That's not Max Payne's Pro Skater. How could you have no punishment for failing tricks or using weapons? How could you pair this with a dodge that counters every enemy attack, regenerating universal ammo, a hefty health bar, on top of super bullet time with bonuses? What, is this game intended to be played by a fungus? Is it more about looking at its explosive combat than actually engaging with it? Or are we so desperate for the 2000s to return that we're going to curb not the drum and bass sandbox freedom or mission design of GTA 3, but the fucking combat? This was my internal monologue during the tutorial, each demonstration prompting a vomiting tween's list of knee-jerk objections. Assuming that all of these measures were a novice indie developer's first 3D attempt at the 2000s gaming industry dirty word: streamlining. We've gone from I don't like fantasy, stealth, and Xbox racing games to I don't like lock-on targeting. The many memories of squeezing that left trigger for over a decade in almost everything fueled my initial chagrin about its presence here, even on a mouse and keyboard. This mechanic was fully intended, as was the absence of a balancing meter, or the inability to bail, and the ability to always dodge. So many things that seem sacrilege to both the games this premise sold me on during a tutorial. But you don't play the tutorial, you play the game. And by the fourth level, I spent more time playing it over and over and over and over and over than some entire games. I felt like an idiot, needing to realize Roll 7 didn't make Max Payne's Pro Skater. Not two halves, a shooter and a skater, but a cocktail called Rollerdrome. In Tony Hawk, a lowered score for incomplete tricks wouldn't be enough to discourage you. In Dewm, 4 weapons and an infinite dodge wouldn't be enough to thrill you. But Tween me didn't understand these things exist in Rollerdrome not because Roll 7 started with streamlining. According to their AMA, Pro Skater and Dewm 2016 were the 2 biggest influences on Rollerdrome. As a result, earlier builds had both the bailing and grinding meters from Tony Hawk, and quickly realized the problem with this picture. At any given moment, the player is keeping tabs on airtime, bullet time, speed, trajectory, enemy positions, enemy density, ammunition, range, combos, incoming fire, critical threats, and potentially using critical threats to activate bonuses like extra damage and reflex. Now imagine all of this with a grinding meter, and bail you for misalignment, and manual aiming. This is not just overwhelming. I'm certain there's a Quake champion who could manage. The real problem is cohesion. Not every game has threats, but most do. In Burnout, there's opponents, obstacles, traffic, and your own control that threaten success, each carrying the same consequence. Tony Hawk is similar. Whether from a grind, spin, trick, alignment, or hazard, you bail and lose combos all the same. But a game like Dewm is different. Just the enemy's range and threat to the player, let alone obstacles, hazards, resources, and the permanent test of one's ability to aim on target. If you can't move or aim, you will suffer the consequences. But no matter how good you are at centering the screen, failing to properly manage your combined resources leads to the same consequence. And that's the delicate balance of Dewm's design. id Software painstakingly constructed their gameplay loop to push and pull the player without ever outright kicking them off a moving board, like Rollerdrome used to. Now, whether your game is made up of immediate or a range of threats, no method is inherently superior. It depends on what's best suited to each game. The priority of shooting makes sense in Dewm because it's a shooter, as does the punishment of bailing in a skater. But Rollerdrome started by taking its premise rather literally, and quickly realized Tony Hawk doesn't have enemies with flamethrowers, and the Doomslayer doesn't ride anything to fall off of, for a reason. Everything in this game listed previously, designs with the potential to form a harmonious challenge for the player to overcome, would be made effectively irrelevant by the priority of moving and shooting. Minimal airtime, poor trajectory, or even incoming fire in a game where you move this fast isn't an immediate threat, but being unable to move would, as would being unable to lay anything on target during a half-pipe. To summarize, if a player stops moving or shooting, they can't enjoy this game. So, Roll7's developers implemented one of the most elegant solutions I've seen to such a fundamental game design quandary. Don't let them. That's why I felt like an idiot. Lock-on isn't in the name of streamlining, copying, or consoleizing. It exists for the same reason bailing doesn't and bullet time does. It's simply to make this game more fun. Simple is this game's design doctrine. If you see a grunt and you've chosen the pistol, it always dies in 4 shots. Simple. Enemy rockets will damage and stun their allies when shot, but not you. Simple. It's the same with movement. Baseline speed is maintained even when skating in the opposite direction to travel via the dodge button. No exceptions. If an enemy attack indicator is white, you can dodge. No exceptions. The base layer of this game, what you're always falling back onto as the player throughout all of its 11 stages, is solid ground. This isn't Reflex Arena, a game I adore, but would never call pick up and play with users varying between 600 updates per second just in movement speed. Rollerdrome doesn't have nearly this level of complexity. Being on skates, you always move at a baseline speed that's fast, yet easy, to the point of not even holding the analog stick. The dodge roll, as mentioned, isn't restricted. This game's reflex time is, but always recharges to a set capacity. Ammunition is a universal shared pool. At full stock, you've got a choice between 12 pistol rounds, 6 shotgun shells, 3 lasers, 2 grenades. No more, no less. And no matter the trick, it will regenerate ammo for all. As a result, despite the gameplay's appearance, it's never overwhelming, even providing an assist menu to adjust the game's speed and damage scale to assure this for anybody. Not to suggest this game has no variables. While your pistol and shotgun lock on, the grenade launcher and Z11 laser, reminiscent of my beloved, don't. I know, all that worry and all for nothing. There isn't an enemy you can't kill without one of the 2 basic weapons, from grunts to mechs. These things remain effective and satisfying from start to finish, serving as a base layer, just like movement. I stopped using the dual pistols on everybody, not because they stopped killing enemies, but because they stopped killing enemies fast enough for me in pursuit of a personal goal. The launcher's trajectory, splash damage, and limited ammunition is a choice. The time taken to aim and charge the laser is a commitment, costing rounds and reflex. but not without a reward. There's more than enough variables between how you start playing and how you finish playing, or in my case, keep playing Rollerdrome, to negate any concern of its simple solutions leading to dumbed-down, cheap thrill one-note combat. Were it so, it wouldn't have taken so long to pin down just what makes this game so unique, beyond the obvious. If Burnout and Pro Skater are exclusively hard threats, and if Dewm has a range of threats, then Rollerdrome's an action game of, for lack of a better word, soft threats. Made not just compelling, but exhilarating by pitting them against the player's soft power. You wield no ultimates, invulnerability, bombs, or win-button firearms. Just a collection of tools that build up to what is on the back end, a tug of war. Selecting that Z11 carries weight, not because the game slows down while aiming, the build up to its full charge, or dealing the heftiest damage, though all of that helps. It's because missing a shot gives the enemy a rare free pull. You can't just switch to the next weapon in your arsenal because of the game's shared universal ammo system, and you can't just try aiming again because of the game's set reflex time. From just this mistake, you've been put on the back foot. The odds are stacked against you. You have to do tricks to get ammo back, and set up the use of reflex time. But not only is this gameplay loop fucking awesome, unlike so many fast-paced combat games, its lack of hard threats and power means that deaths are never a surprise, and therefore, frustrating. The bullet sponges won't instant kill you, the snipers can't surprise you, the homing missiles can't stun you, the hit scanners can't barrage you, the enemies can't heal damage from you. There's nothing to make you go, what the fuck? Especially through the game's commitment to clearly communicating everything. Your gunshots chain sound in relation to ammo. Snipers and polybeams can always be pinpointed in the moment. Shotgun slugs are built into the reticle rather than changing modes manually. All enemies but stompers don't pursue you. Combos are maintained per hit, not just kills. Even jumping directly into a wall doesn't stop you. There's nothing to impede a player. Roll7 left not one stone unturned, using every ingredient at their disposal to concoct such an immaculate balance of challenge and depth. The game's solutions are simple, but the game isn't simplistic. Making a high-speed arena combat game with fire mechs, flying AoEs, tower snipers, energy shield-equipped rocket launchers, and laser-beaming teleporters without me pulling a single hair is expert game design. If I've seen a blueprint this meticulous before, I've never felt it through the lens of a third-person shooter. Relishing this level of craftsmanship while pelting snipers upside down with dual pistols into a quarter pipe, dodging multiple missiles close enough to read their serial number, or skating deliberately into a bomb with the confidence to dodge it at the perfect time to activate the final tool in your arsenal. One that perhaps can't be called soft. Gifting a damage buff, extra ammo, and a full reflex charge, with highlighted enemies and the base levels cranked. Instilling a power trip that's just as infectious as another favorite from the following year, and for the same reason, because it's earned. Attaching the most powerful state to exactly what you're supposed to avoid is an ingenious method of giving the player a rush every time they dodge and hold the left trigger. And it is a rush every time, because activating Super Reflex isn't always the right choice. It often is, and completely changes how you tackle the arenas. But because you only have 4 seconds of reflex time, and at most 12 rounds of ammunition, any opportunity for going super always comes with it a decision to make. From directing it to a power weapon, preparing a dodge, clearing missiles, or even to cancel in favor of other resources. Its satisfaction, then, isn't just visual and auditory stimulus, but from setting up the scenario yourself, to make the most of this mode. You caused this awesome thing to happen on the screen. And at no point does the game stop you to explain this. You're free to progress through this campaign at your own pace on your own terms, with only a gentle nudge towards its more advanced mechanics. Ones that you don't need to progress, but want for fun. Rollerdrome changes so much from the games I love that connect directly to it, and I wouldn't revert a single one. No matter how different it may seem, the end result is just like its cited influences. The coolest and most satisfying moments in this game aren't scripted, but formed out of your moves made at the perfect moment. But great gameplay is nothing without great levels. Dewm is great. The Archvile Maze is not. So if Roll 7 are more TNT than John Romero, this game might as well have been coded by a fungus. Which, mean as that might be, wouldn't be surprising, given this was Roll 7's first 3D non-linear game. The Ollie Ollies were side-scrollers. It's a transition that's notoriously pummeled developers in the past, ones with a lot more hands on deck and cash in the bank. But like Lock-On, it was a different era. And the benefit of being long past it is freely building levels to the scale that's appropriate, like Rollerdrome. These skate park arenas are small, nothing far beyond even the Pro Skater warehouse in scale, or the Argent facility in verticality. But just like its game design required deviations from their inspirations, so does level design, and with the same measure of elegance. In Pro Skater, it's common for levels to have 90-degree corners, staircases, benches, tunnels, all sorts of things which can stop you dead in your tracks. And it's pretty great. Navigating these obstacles and learning not just how to work around them, but incorporate them directly into your momentum, trajectory, and combos is all part of the fun. There's also nobody shooting at you, and that's why everything I just mentioned doesn't really exist in Rollerdrome. No waits! There's one corner in the Houston Mall. Joking aside, I never even noticed this until watching GameThoughts' video. But just like how Rainbow Six Siege doesn't have a single door, you can't unsee it. The amount of space between jumps, the number of angled walls. Early levels don't even have a wall to skate into on the main floor, just engulfing you in one continuous quarter pipe. It's such a graceful solution to ensure that players are always moving, as is making every fun box symmetrical, allowing players to launch themselves towards an enemy no matter the angle they approach. Later levels do break up the quarter pipes, utilize the game's wall riding, acid drop, and air out mechanics. But none of these things change the access you always have to ammo, only the amount of intent required from you. And the game makes getting a lot better as it gets a little harder. So easy. According to level designer Jacob Mills, gameplay was locked down almost completely before even joining the team, let alone grayboxing levels, leading the team to establish various principles that constitute a good level in this weird genre mashup with no other industry reference point. Things like avoiding symmetrical layouts and specialized lanes, ensuring that a player making the same moves, jumps, and routes is by choice, not necessity. Quarter pipes always having at least 13 meters of space is also for player agency, granting them enough time to weigh combat options and have the space to maneuver. The obstacles from Tony Hawk do exist, just in the form of mech suits of flamethrowers rather than a park bench. What would be vastly empty space in its inspiration is quickly packed to the brim here. Yet levels don't get bigger as the game progresses, because as was also identified by the team, smaller levels are actually harder. The less space a player has to move, the more powerful area of denial enemies become. They even pounced upon the reasonable fears regarding sameness, visually and technically. And these biomes are beautiful examples of reused assets being maximized. Despite the similarity of each arena's backdrop, they still feature bespoke segments in both art and gameplay. Eiger Resort may have the snow, concrete, and glass windows from Cavetta Summit, but it also has a VIP lounge room that's completely unique to it, and notably with multiple options for gameplay, as it can be approached north and south, and has multiple exits that connect to each of its 3 distinct pockets. What results is a campaign that doesn't have a weak link. It's all killer, no filler, in the way it plays and the way it looks. Rollerdrome would look exquisite in motion, even if the presentation was Rat's Instagib, a game I adore. In fact, the game's existence is itself proof of this. Rollerdrome's creative director, Paul Rabbit, didn't work for Roll7. He was a solo dev, converting their Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam prototype into 3D, and the GIFs he posted were a wildfire that reached the headquarters of publishers and developers. The game then had a whole team backing Paul's creation, and lead artist Antoine Decaro grew up reading the comics in his father's library that inspired Rollerdrome. Just like Sable the year prior, seeing Ligny-Claire in motion makes even the basic archetype of arena, canyon, mall, and mountain a visual treat. From every spotlight, helicopter, firearm, spiked helmet, and missile smoke trail to protagonist Kara Hassan's iconic worthy design is just like opening a Franco-Belgian comic. But it goes beyond that. The artists at Roll7 made an exhaustive effort to create a world from top to bottom, which is why every facility, mech pilot, and missile smoke trail also looks fantastic in the game's animated launch trailer. You can almost sense Antoine analyzing his childhood heroes, or lead character artist Rachel Cox having worked on every character in the game. The art design permanently benefits Rollerdrome's appeal, but the art technique just as perpetually benefits Rollerdrome's gameplay.
Look at this, you can see absolutely everything. The exact placement of enemies, their silhouettes so you know what they are, their health bars, all the geometry around them, the signage in the background, absolutely everything that is on screen is perfectly visible to you because of this art style.
Style is substance, and Rollerdrome is unquestionably heightened tenfold by presentation that's just as superb as the gameplay it enhances. To revisit how weapons change sound to inform players, the cues for perfect dodge, low health, confirmed kill, super reflex, and each type of critical threat are just as distinct and pleasant. That perfect dodge cue is satisfying just to hear, like drifting in Project Gotham Racing. Effects for indicators are understandably overlooked, the more visceral sounds of things like weapons or engines, but they're not to be underestimated. If you're going to be hearing a sound effect thousands of times, it better be satisfying. Better yet, immersing you in the game's world. And Rollerdrome always does, from Super Reflex to S-Rank. You'll hear none of my usual whinging about stock sound effects here, but you will get my usual demo of a phenomenal original score by Electric Dragon. You know, I've been writing about games for quite a while now. And yet this elaborate fangasm has been the hardest, because every single piece of this game connects so seamlessly, like its levels, there is no obvious linear path to take. When a game does everything right, how do you structure that? I've taken for granted the ease in which to usually cover a game as, here's everything it does in pursuit of its goal, and here's everything it does against its goal. Because the latter doesn't exist here. I can't even talk about bugs. These are all the ones I've recorded in over 20 hours, and all of them occurring not just after my playthrough, but modifying the game files via third-party software. One of my favorite games has a broken turret. My most discussed game can't load its textures properly. Neither can the debut in one of my favorite franchises. It's normal for art to have obvious faults. Sometimes they're even the best part. And it's why I am amazed that Rollerdrome doesn't have anything like this. No easily repeatable bug, no desk-punching boss, no song I dislike. There is no swimming level. There is no bad minigame. There is no useless skill tree. There is no unskippable cutscene. There is no always online connection. There is no forced game mode. There is not a single catch. I never hit a wall. Not even in its story. In combat, you pilot Kara Hassan. But in these levels, you are Kara. Rollerdrome's hotshot rookie with a $342,000 loan to cover her $348,000 entry fee. Welcome to a respectful note from the sports reigning champion and an invitation to private lessons from the runner-up. These levels are the opposite of gameplay in tone. You're not fueled to move an inch. Levels are empty. Death lurks around no corner, and not a moment is scored, leaving you to explore this future behind the curtain of all the spectacle it creates for viewers. Reading the media instructions of a megacorp, planting your head against the door to eavesdrop conversations, posing the action figure of yourself, or snooping a competitor's emails. It's not realistic, but it is immersive. When the levels are this dehumanized, I believe it when reading in them that the journalists are silenced, the competitors are fixed, the house players are people, and the fruit is plastic. Roaming these halls, I was reminded of another minimalist Tomorrow's World. A cynic could say these choices are necessities with no creativity. I do often think of that time when James Williams joked on Inside Gaming many years ago, "We decided to go for a minimalist style because we didn't have any money." But it is only a joke. Minimalist styles have been realized beautifully by people with the means to make something else, and photorealistic cutscenes with Hollywood talent writing, directing, animating, and acting have been handled poorly. I'd love to see more of Rollerdrome's world, but hold no interest for the alternate reality of Roll 7 telling this story with a 1,000-staff development team and a $250 million budget. Because in this reality, where a team of 44 developers and 8 voice actors managed to elevate Tony Hawk with guns into an iconic dystopia, I can't be a cynic. And part of this story's execution is if you are. If you don't care about the reigning champion's mentorship, the runner-up's entitlements, or the megacorp's dispassion, you just walk down a hallway, witness one of the smoothest transitions in gaming history, and start blasting. How good is this game? When trying to identify a fault, I recalled the few times when so much was going on, an explosive barrel is shot rather than an enemy. But not only does this occur in basically every lock-on system ever made, despite all the sheer chaos of Rollerdrome's arenas, I had by far the least amount of mistargeting ever in a locked-on based third-person shooter. Even a potential fault highlights this game's strength. That's how good it is. But what about the lack of character, weapon, or arena customization? What about its 4-hour campaign? What about never meeting other characters? What about its multiple choices' lack of consequence? What about skateboarding's absence? What about multiple enemy factions? What about all the things this game does not have? I've talked before about games that iterate upon their inspirations. And I can easily see an iteration of Rollerdrome, be it a sequel or spiritual successor, with things like the Onslaught mode from Resident Evil 6, or selecting multiple characters like SSX, maybe even creating your own character like Roll7's very own Ollie Ollie World. But one set of mechanics doesn't universally improve games, only change them. In the same way Ocho isn't Hotline Miami, a game with all these things wouldn't be Rollerdrome. A chiseled, uncompromised, zero-excess genre fusion realized to perfection. But if it's so perfect, why wouldn't it get a sequel? Ah, right. Make a mediocre game? Fired. Make a BAFTA-winning third-person shooter on your first fucking attempt? Also fired. If this is what perfection achieves, it understandably raises the question of, what even is the point of it? Why bother? Why put in all this effort if you're just going to be laid off anyway? Why devote your time and energy to something that's great when it's the same result as something that sucks? Why make a perfect game when it doesn't mean you'll get to make another game? This is Art of Rally, and just like Rollerdrome, it's perfection. From pick-up-and-play controls with the depth and punishment of a simulator, to its bespoke soundtrack with over 4 hours of electronic bops. In gorgeous, minimalist, yet atmospheric style, Art of Rally is a chiseled, uncompromised, zero-excess arcade racer, realized to perfection. And, predictably, its developer, Fun Selector Labs Incorporated, released a new game. I don't know yet if it's as perfect as Art of Rally is, nor do I know if their newly announced Over the Hill will be. But whether they are isn't the point. It's that this small team's perfection was met with the opportunity to make another game. And it's not because they did anything different than Roll7, but because quality is only one piece of an art that since its birth has been frequently and easily made irrelevant. GameSpot used to have a dubious honor award called The Best Game No One Played 20 years before it became a commonplace YouTube thumbnail. Quality has never assured opportunity. As we've seen, not even financial success can. A perfect game doesn't mean anything to the world. But a game isn't about the world, the sales, the revenue, or the words from critics. It's about the rush of Super Reflex, the endearment of Kara's action figure, the repugnant company emails, the curiosity upon eavesdropping, and the strain in your neck after headbanging to Electric Dragon soundtrack in the middle of launching from a halfpipe. It's about an individual's experience when they're playing it. Sometimes I fear this has been devalued over the years, that more games and coverage these days are just about demanding the player's attention. Sometimes I fear that I'm part of the problem, spending the last 2 years reading about games more than experiencing them. Sometimes I fear that because one's experience with art is so rarely seen, that an artist lucky enough to be part of a perfect game could walk away thinking it had little to no impact on anyone. That if it means so little to the world, it wouldn't mean anything to an individual, or that the number of individuals isn't worth it. Rollerdrome was my latest reminder. At least that final fear isn't true. Despite all I've played, watched, and heard, especially the things that inspired this game, Rollerdrome affected me. It changed my outlook on whole genres. It made something through them that always could have existed, but just never had until now. And I consider it sad if the next perfect game never happened, because someone didn't see the point in making it due to the world it's made in. Because of the world, there is no reason to buy Rollerdrome. But because of what these people accomplished together, there will always be a reason to experience it. When Raycevick letterboxed. Last year. Though you only know what I've seen, I don't bother with reviews. Do you think you're going to quit deceiving yourself anytime soon? I mean, I wrote the opening of this video last year thinking it'd be 10 minutes, so... What game series do you wish you could play through fully without actually having to play through it? Ooh, KOTOR. I'm sorry, I still think about the story in those games to this day, but good grief is its gameplay ass. I'm not asking for Devil May Cry or Gears of War, but this hybrid pseudo real-time combat shit is a trend I do not want to have a comeback. Ray, you've been to America and you saw some things. If you don't mind me asking,
how'd you survive all this?
Being Canadian, why is Rhode Island the worst state and why is it Sparky? I don't know. I watched NASCAR, drank coffee milk, and stabbed Sparky with a lightsaber. So it can't be the worst state. Also, level 99, please expand. Wearing my shirt through the airport, I got stopped 3 or 4 times by people asking if I work there because they love the place so much. How do you get out of a creative block where you feel like you cannot progress with a project? Asking for a friend. In my case with this one, genuinely, consume way more art and do way more things outside of art. One of the things I really changed in starting this year was dropping what I'm sure is a pretty common habit of going to things like YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, etc. for content, and either scrolling until it's gone dark or leaving with maybe 10% of what I just consumed being remembered. Unlike social media, movies, shows, albums, linear games, etc. have a beginning, middle, and end. They have something for you to walk away with, even if that feeling is that it sucked. That's more than what these websites give when consuming them aimlessly. It might sound really silly that booting up a shitty Netflix movie is more inspiring, but my favorite line from Alan Moore is,
read terrible books as well, because they can be more inspiring.
Also, ask yourself why you are blocked, and be brutally honest. I was blocked in this project because I didn't know how to structure the game's quality. Then realized I can just make that the structure, and it started to come together from there. Why did you block the release of TXR in Canada? Cause it's ruining my video's relevance. Are you literally Ryan Gosling? I am me. What videos from your past catalog would you consider revisiting, or where your thoughts and opinions have changed? I think I've mentioned this before, but I've thought about redoing Halo Reach years later as my 100th video for some time. It's not so much what I said about the game that's my problem, but the way it's said. This was a project where I very much lean into the influences of popular, sarcastic, angry critics, and it just doesn't suit me. What's next? Perfect Dark Zero.